So, someone on Twitter recently came out to say that Kenyan podcasts are enough and all of them have pretty much the same exact formats and, they discuss more or less the same kind of things. And all of this shit is very cliched and played out. And as a Kenyan podcast, I felt some type of way about it because I feel like I've been trying to do things differently. But if someone says that Kenyan podcasters have been doing shit more or less the same exact way, then it's very hard to kind of disappoint someone. So, in line with the brand, considering that one of the things that I discuss just so happens to be a very cliche thing, which is relationships, I figured I might as well talk about the very cliche topics in relationships that other Kenyan podcasters talk about. Except that I will give a unique take on each and every one of them because at least I want to try and sound a little bit different even though all the same. But before I can do any of that, I want to start things off by talking about the animal kingdom and how some things just seem a hell of a lot easier for some animals than for us human beings. More so us guy human beings. So apparently, and this is actually a fun fact, male cheetahs have a special bark that causes female cheetahs to ovulate on demand. Like, let me just get this straight. You're telling me that these cheetahs, when it's mating season or when they're horny and shit, they literally just go and they just their way through to some pussy? Do you know how I would have loved to have that ability? The thought that I could get a bunch of babes just by growling and I can do some shit with them and then afterwards they'd be over there busy feeling all good telling me,
"The royal penis is clean, your highness."
Like, if you think about that, happening for human beings, I feel like we'd probably never have clubs, or clubs wouldn't have really been a thing the way they used to be back in the day. Because you think about it, a lot of people go and try and hit on other people at the clubs, and for the most part, we hope that the music and the fact that guys are enjoying themselves with the music will kind of help soothe things or make things a little bit easier for us. But if us guys had a special bark that we could do you know clubs would never have music? We'd literally be walking in and you'd just be hearing people But hey, anyways, let me just read the quick caption that came with this because it's actually pretty short. So it says, and I quote, "Male cheetahs turn females on." Literally. Researchers have found that a specific bark triggers the female reproductive system to release eggs. Unlike other cat species, female cheetahs ovulate rarely and at unusual times. They also lack a regular reproductive cycle. End quote. Now, back to the whole if guys had this sort of ability, how good it would be type of thing. I'm trying to think about it. If God was to approach each and every one of us and be like, you know what, I see that you've been a particularly good human or a bad one, and I'm willing to give you one animal's ability for you to enjoy the rest of your life with, which one would it be? People would be asking for extended eyesight, hearing, intelligence, the ability to swim quickly or even just to swim and shit. But now imagine the person that says, I want to have a special bark so that I can use it to attract women and make them ovulate on demand. Do you know that person would be one of the most in-demand guys on this entire planet? The thought that you can pull just about any babe just by growling. Most guys usually have some sort of a growl and usually it's called money and that's what they try to use to attract babes. But it usually doesn't work all that great because there's some women who say that they can't be bought or, they don't react to money. Some require even more of it. And for some others, they're usually in relationships or married. So it's probably not a good idea for them to sort of step out, at least in most cases. But you're looking at it you pull one of those DMX type growls and you're like, "Hurr," and all of a sudden a shorty just gets what she wants to be with you. That shit would be wild though. Although what is wilder is the fact that I'm using this to start a very cliche episode, which I should have started in a much more cliche manner by saying, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who sometimes wishes he had that special cheetah growl. Then when I'm on top, I can finally use the DMX line, X gon' give it to you, and just enjoy myself with that shit. He is a man who believes that astrology should have been the study of ass. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This episode has started with more growls than I've ever given for the past 400 and something episodes. But hey, and as far as episodes this week goes, it's like I'm just dealing with things that just make animal noises. The previous episode, I was busy talking about dogs and doggy style. Now I'm busy talking about cheetahs. I feel like there's a running theme here, but I'll just chalk it up to coincidence because honestly, this is just linking things that have zero link at any given point, but just so happen to be very closely related. But all in all, thank you for listening to the Break Time Podcast. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And considering that this is one of them Friday episodes, it's one of those episodes where I usually go onto X and I pull up a couple of tweets and I break them down a little bit. And it's one of those episodes where it's mostly the feedback from everyone else that can help make this episode more than anything. And the drill on how you can submit the tweet so that I can discuss them is actually pretty simple. Almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly. On Facebook or on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to on Facebook is @TheBreaktime Podcast. The DMs are always open, and on IG it is @TheBreaktime_podcast, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. Now, I have a couple of tweets that I need to get into, and they're all very, very cliche-ish. But before I can get into any of those, first of all, we had a couple of interesting stories this past week, and two of them involved the relationships of two people from the west side of Kenya. And the first one was Ferdinand Omanyala. At the beginning of the week, there was the whole story about his supposed infidelity and the fact that he dropped his babe to be with some gym babe that supposedly, according to someone, used to date a friend of his. And I honestly don't know where that story came from, but considering some of the things that were being said about it, it's something that I feel probably should be discussed at length, which is why I won't discuss it here. I will discuss it possibly next episode as like a main topic or something, because there's actually quite a bit to be talked about there. Now, the other story was the whole Nick Odhiambo story. For those of y'all that don't know, media personality Nick Odhiambo, I think he recently got married, or he just posted up some photos with his wife. And some guy decided to just mess everything up by posting up a screenshot from a WhatsApp group where some guy just so happened to have a nude with his wife there, busy holding onto his dick and everything. And dude decided to share it on the group. Nick Odhiambo was like, oh shit, that's my wife. And the guy took that screenshot and posted it up on Twitter. Now, while I can say that whatever it is that guy who posted up the screenshot did was wrong, still, at the end of the day, I feel like regardless of the whole thing about the past, I feel like it's common knowledge at this point. You're just not supposed to take explicit content of each other or of yourself. Like, anytime someone does that, that shit ends up being shared and that shit just comes back to bite you. And honestly, not unless if you're selling that shit on OnlyFans, I do not see the use in doing that. So I usually don't like to say too much more beyond that. But if you feel hell-bent on actually getting it done, or you really, really want it done, there's usually rules to that shit. One, make sure your face isn't involved, and make sure you don't make any sounds that, sound distinctively like you, and make sure there's no particular birthmarks or identifying features that end up on camera that can be traced back to you. And also, I think send it over Snapchat so that, you can determine who views it and the fact that it shouldn't be screenshotted or some shit like that. But still, I'm always for not doing it at all. If you're really into this person, meet up with them, shag them. If it's a long distance thing, same thing. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be doing explicit shit like this. But all in all, with that said, I want to move it on to the tweets. But before I do that, I want to discuss something that someone said which ended up on Twitter. Now, the Twitter influencer, or tweetfluencer as they like to call themselves, called Bravin Yuri, recently came out to state something about going 50-50 on bills. Now, I usually have my thoughts on it, but considering that this is a very cliche episode, I might as well talk about it because it involves money and relationships. He said, and I quote, "If you date a man who keeps insisting on 50-50, just know you are dating an individual who will bring hell to your life. As the man of the house, you have to provide 100%. This does not mean the woman can't choose to buy tomatoes or onions in the house. It means she can choose not to, and you still have to because you have to. The woman can only step in when things are tough, and this is just a supporting role until you're back on your feet. When an individual insists on 50-50, just walk away. Most of the time, they are controlling, childish, and verbally abusive, immature, and mama's boys. Mostly raised in homes where there was a lacking father figure, and you will feel the consequences. You will see the signs even before you choose to settle with such. And don't settle with them. You will be asking us for advice. These are people you will be in the hospital sick, and they will say, I paid for the rent, you pay for the hospital. When it's an emergency, you either listen or you will learn the hard way. Providing is a role that men have to embrace. This idea of 50-50 has become widely spread like bushfire, and you know why? It is because women's empowerment has made many men believe women can also be providers in the home just like men, and well, this never ends well in relationships. End quote. So this guy said that in IG, and I think he also decided to publish the same on Twitter, and it kind of caused a bit of a ruckus with some people, and honestly speaking, I feel like I'm tired of discussing shit like this. Honestly, like the whole 50-50 thing, I think the simplest way of saying it is I want someone who can also be open to contributing. This whole thing of feeling like, oh, because I'm a babe, I'm not supposed to be paying for shit is the thing that I don't like. But all in all, like most times whenever people bring up this talking point of a man's role is to provide, so he has to provide, like if it's a guy that's usually giving that shit, it's usually a guy that is either single, has a bunch of extra cash, or both. Because to be honest, the people who are married, not unless if they have good money, usually won't say shit like this. And the people who are in good relationships, especially in this day and age, and they're particularly young people, probably also won't say such shit because they know for a fact that in reality that's mostly bullshit. Because the reality of the fact is, in as much as someone wants to come back and say, oh, you know, women's empowerment made men think that women can also be providers, we need to accept one thing. With the current economy, in most places around the world, and considering the fact that women are in some fields out earning men, at least some of them, it's very evident that in most places you cannot comfortably afford to have a family, or even just afford to have a family on a single average man's income. So by the time someone is busy coming to say a bunch of this shit, he either has no idea or experience in raising a family or being married to someone, or they just have the money and they think that they can actually manage to do it, forgetting that children are pricey as shit, regardless of what income level you're on. And that's something that I know for a fact. But considering that I am neither married nor do I have a family that I'm taking care of, let me just refer to a married man who actually responded to this on Twitter and said, and I quote, "If anyone reading this is ready to settle down, especially men, this is terrible advice. Each person brings 100% to make 100%. Yes, 100% plus 100% is not 200%. Not the man doing 100 and the woman does 20 to make 120%. What happens when the provider is incapacitated or you two get a divorce?" End quote. And with that, I think I'll just leave it there because I do have a bunch of tweets that I need to get into. And I will start things off with the very first tweet, which was tweeted by a man who said, and I quote, "A question. Why in the hell, when I was genuine with women and honest, they stopped caring and do the let's be friends? But now when I'm not caring and just focusing on myself and my career and my body, spiritually and culturally as well, they just fall in line and keep coming to me." End quote. Okay, first of all, it's not that my grammar is shit. I think this guy is just from an Arab country or just knows Arabic, so he was doing a bunch of direct translation when he was busy asking this question. Now, someone decided to respond to this and he said, and I quote, "Most women will deny this, but this is the truth. Women tend to be attracted to the men they don't like and unattracted to the men they do like. If you are genuine and honest and transparent with your feelings, you're not complicated and you're not exciting, but you feel safe so that they quote unquote like you, but they aren't attracted to you because there's no element of danger to you. This is the behavior women encourage in men and outwardly state they prefer, although they almost always friendzone every man foolish enough to be misled by this. You feel safe, but you don't make her feel safe. And what I mean by that is you feel safe because you're non-threatening, but because you're non-threatening, you haven't demonstrated you can protect her and make her feel safe, which is why women go after men who make them feel unsafe in a dangerous, oh my god, I'm getting wet sort of way, not a creepy, impotent, disgust, response-triggered sort of way, because they know that if you can make her feel unsafe, he can make others feel unsafe. So then if he can get him to like her, he will use that power to make her feel safe both with him and from others. And I'll end quote it there. Because this guy typed out an explanation that was literally 1,000 words long. I actually went and they even looked for a word count and I checked. It was about 1,072 words. Now, granted, I don't think I need 1,072 words to explain this shit, because I feel like it's actually not as hard to discuss it. Because for one, a lot of guys actually go through this. A lot of guys who are particularly good people tend to be very nice with girls, and they usually try to appeal to them from that angle, and it usually backfires. Granted, I also used to be in that sort of box. I used to do that all the time, and I got friend zoned a lot. Like, I shit you the fuck not, I did a lot of that in university, and I got friend zoned a lot in university. But what sort of changed was when I stopped giving too much of a flying damn about it, because it got to a point where I actually realized that I was giving so much of myself and I wasn't getting much back. And I actually also realized that it's like I was doing stuff for other people instead of myself. And at that point, I actually stopped giving too much of a flying damn about it. And stuff actually kind of did change for the better. Not that, I stopped caring about women and I now started treating them like shit. No, that's not what I did. I just did more things for me and I was very confident and okay with it. Which is something that I'd advise most guys who are exceptionally nice to babes to actually do. Because interestingly enough, I feel like, and this is just an assumption, it's not like properly like documented or confirmed or anything, but I feel like for a lot of guys, you doing that for a babe, the whole being good, being nice and like bending over backwards for her, while it does seem nice and while they do ask for it, actually does kind of come off as, almost like a play that you're making to just get between the sheets with her, which maybe a lot of babes pick up on and they're like, fuck no, I don't want to do that. And also, from what I've noticed with a lot of women, they tend to, they tend to act all nice with each other, and the moment you notice a babe is being exceptionally nice with another babe, it's like there's a very good chance that they're not that nice with each other and there's a manipulation game or some version of a cold war that's happening, and maybe they just translate that to guys whenever they're doing that. It's like, I don't know what it is that you want from me, so I'm gonna start off from a no and just close myself up. And maybe the whole impression of, in as much as the guy is nice and he's bending over backwards, him bending over backwards means that he has no spine. So it could be either one of those. And honestly, I could be wrong in either one of those. And, I probably even am. But what I can probably give as a tip for most guys is stop trying to bend over backwards for a babe that you like just because you like them. Because guess what? The fact that you like them and you're choosing to be nice with them because you like them is something that they can pick up on. And if they can pick up on that shit, they'll probably be like, you know what, fuck it. I know this guy is doing this just because he wants to get into my pants, not because he's genuinely that way. Which is why I suggest that, you just do shit for you. If you want to do it for her because it's a nice thing to do and you're a good person that's willing to do it, do it. But if you're doing it because you like the babe, because you wish that you could be with her, or you wish that you could lay some pipe, then, well, my nigga, you're simping. And if a babe doesn't like a simp, then clearly you're not getting some. And final tip, if you've been rejected by a babe, just move the fuck on. Like the whole trying to go back and be like, oh, well, if I did this a little bit better. Sometimes a babe's just not interested in you, no matter how nice you are with them. So if you can kill the bitterness, accept that you've gotten an L and move on and continue doing shit for you, you'll probably be a lot better off at bagging other babes because you won't be carrying around a bunch of baggage. Although then again, I could be wrong about that one as well. Either way, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our next tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a babe who said, and I quote, "So, my current is a married lad. The guy is just my type. Tell me why we were in bed naked and his wife called him. So he pulls me in close and gets on top, talking to his wife while kissing me and all. That felt so fucking good. Actually, he asked if I liked that. He knew I'd love it. And I asked him to always do that and he said he would. Just glad I met a psychopath like myself. End quote. Alright, this is a classic case of cheating that we have here, and from this entire bit of text that I've seen here, I can derive probably about 3 things. 1, this man does not love his wife. Like, I know there's someone who's gonna be like, oh, you know, when a man cheats, he doesn't love his wife. Nah, that's bullshit. A man can cheat on his babe but still love her. It's not rocket science. Sometimes guys just go for casual sex. Not that I endorse cheating. Secondly, I'm probably about 90% sure that this guy is not banging any other side pieces or any other babes besides her and maybe his wife. Third, this man does not respect his wife, and he's probably in that relationship and or marriage probably for the sake of the kids, or maybe just for the social validation of being a married man. Besides that, dude does not give too much of a flying shit, which is something you could argue can be derived from the very first point, but still it sort of exists as a point of its own. And the reason why I can derive all of these things is because of the details that she's given. Now, the whole first bit of the lack of respect, and this guy probably doesn't love his wife, and he actually probably loves this babe, is because of the way this guy behaved. Now, usually, like, it's not like it's uncommon for guys to be called whenever they're with their side chicks. But normally, if the guy loves his wife, if the guy respects his wife, actually, if the guy respects his wife, it's not even a love thing. If the guy respects his wife, he will usually step aside and pick up the phone, or he'll tell the side chick to shut the fuck up and just pick up the phone. He will not want anything to give up the fact that this guy is piping another babe. All right. Usually they tend to just sort of pull themselves aside. And that is something that's very common with guys who cheat, but not usually with women who cheat. It's very rare for a woman to do it when she's cheating. She'll actually act the same way this guy acted, but I'll get to that in a second. Now, the other part is, when you look at how guys cheat, usually when it's just a casual fun thing, there's usually a certain love or care or respect that the wife gets, which means that the guy would not allow this kind of quote-unquote internal disrespect to go, because it would seem as though it's like he doesn't give a damn about the wife. Now, where you'll see this commonly happening is actually with women that are cheating on their men. Because normally, a lot of times, actually in 75% of the cases, whenever a woman is cheating on a guy, you will find that by the time she's doing that, she's checked out emotionally and she feels nothing towards the dude, which is why whenever that cheating happens, there's an extra layer of disrespect that's usually painted there. So, for example, if, say, maybe you and the babe were using condoms and you're dating, then you'll find that she'll be going raw with this guy. The guy can pull her hair. The guy could possibly spit on her and she'll accept it. Like, you'll find that the guy is allowed to be more disrespectful with her because she gives that level of access, most times out of spite, but also a lot of times because they start to catch some sort of feeling or some level of emotional attachment with the guy that they're cheating on their man with. And that's something that you see happen quite a lot with women. And usually whenever they do that, it's not like they're sleeping with multiple men. They're usually sleeping with one guy, and they've had this thing with one guy and they want to keep it to that one guy. So it's like they moved the emotional attachment from the husband to this guy, and the guy has all of that access, which in this guy's case is pretty much the same situation. It's just that there's a gender swap and it's the husband who's doing this to the wife, meaning that there's a pretty good chance that this guy has checked out of the relationship, has checked out of the marriage, and there's a pretty good chance the wife either doesn't know or doesn't care as well, because she might have checked out as well. Either way, that's my breakdown of it, and I am going to leave it and move it on to our final tweet of this episode, which was also tweeted by a woman who said, and I quote, "This guy rejected my friend because her body count is up to 20. Is this a valid reason to reject someone if you genuinely love her?" End quote. Now, I don't know if this is just a me thing, but I feel like if you have a preference for a woman with a low body count, it's your preference and it's entirely up to you, and it's no one else's problem but yours. You're the one that has a preference for a woman with a low body count. Now, of course, there's the whole preference versus prejudice sort of debate that's there, but I feel like the bigger underlying question that's being asked about this, which Shorty isn't really trying to bring up is whether having a high body count is a valid reason to disqualify someone, which I'll be very honest is yes and no, but it kind of depends on the individual because there's different ways of looking at it. Now, statistically speaking, if a woman has, I think it's 10 bodies or is it 8, then the chances of her marriage ending within the first 10 years is, I think, like 80% or some shit like that. Like, there's a stat that gives it out. I've read it a couple of times, but I can't remember the details exactly right now. Now, that of course means that if Shorty has a body count of 20, then damn, the chances of us lasting are very, very moot. But the reason why I don't think that this is the entire picture is because right now we are living at a day and age where people are having more sex with more people than ever before. At least, that's what I think. Because when you think about it, people are having sex before they get into a relationship, when they're in a relationship, and there's also people that are doing whole phases either before or after a relationship. So it's not very hard to clock 10 bodies, which will automatically put you in the very likely to fail in marriage category. Although, not that I like disproving statistics and everything, but at the same time, I've also noticed something particularly different. Now, this isn't something that I've statistically, looked at or I've studied or anything, but something that I've noticed is that for a lot of women, if you decide to take a break from sex, you don't shag people for a bit of a while, there's a pretty good chance that your capability for emotional attachment, which is something that you lose when you shag more and more guys, if you especially become promiscuous, actually does sort of start to, I don't want to say heal, but come back to a certain degree after a while of you actually exercising some level of celibacy where you pretty much decide to drop every single guy and you go like full zero for a while. And usually after that, you find that a lot more women are open to the idea of dating, but they're a lot more choosy. You will find that they do not just want to sleep with anyone and everyone, and they tend to be more sexually reserved as opposed to how they probably were previously. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're a babe that you should go and shag everyone and then get to a point and then just, go off of sex for like 2-3 months. At the same time, I also haven't said how long it'll be because I do believe it varies from person to person, but it's not like you having a body count means that you have zero capability for emotional attachment for the rest of your life. It's definitely possible, and I do believe that for some babes it has actually worked. But truth of the matter is, whether you want to look at it socially or in some other way, a woman's sexual purity has always been valued, and the more pure a woman is sexually, the higher she is going to be valued. And that's sort of a fact. That's why we don't like hoes. And that's why if you're a woman and you have a high body count and someone knows that you have a high body count, then they'll probably regard you a little less in the whole possibly to have a long-term relationship with criteria. But, then again, I could be wrong about this shit, just to say I could be wrong about a lot of other things on this episode, which is why I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. On Facebook and on IG, it is at the Breaktime Podcast and at the Breaktime_podcast, respectively. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.